Most people tear their ACL and they think, okay, get it fixed, get the surgery, I'll miss as little time as possible. And I get it. You don't want to be on the sidelines for too long, but there's a couple of things you need to think of that no one really tells you about. If you rush into that surgery before your knee is ready, it could be one of the biggest mistakes that you make in your rehab. And the research and a lot of the athletes that I work with show that those who take a bit of time before the surgery to let their knee calm down and get as strong as they can tend to do better in the initial stages post-surgery as well. And in this video, I'm going to show you a number of reasons why that is. If you're new here, my name is John. I'm a physiotherapist and I work with athletes at every stage of ACL rehab, from just after they've done their injury right up until return to sport and beyond. And one of the most common questions that I get asked is, should I have my surgery as quick as possible? In my opinion, I would say no, and I would wait, and I would tell my athletes to wait maybe 4 to 6 weeks before having your surgery, if you can. Now, obviously, there are a number of different instances where this isn't possible. For example, if there's a bucket handle meniscus tear, or maybe you're a professional athlete and you're contractually obliged to a club and they obviously want you back as quick as possible. But for the majority of people, I think a good solid prehab block and taking that time before the surgery is a good idea. And if you don't want to take my word for it, let's have a look at the research. So the research is pretty clear in that those who have better function before the surgery tend to have better function after the surgery. And this function includes increasing your range of motion before the surgery, getting your knee as straight as you possibly can before the surgery, getting your quads firing really, really well, and getting your normal walking pattern back. The stronger you are and the more functional you are before the surgery, you're giving yourself a better platform to build on then after the surgery. Most surgeons will tell you the same thing, but they might not tell you exactly how long to wait. And the athletes that I usually work with, and the advice I usually give, is a period of like 4 to 6 weeks of rehab, prehab, whatever you want to call it, but structured training, doing the same things that you would be doing post-op in your day-to-day life pre-op. And you can't think of this as delaying the surgery, you can think of this as the start of your rehab. I had an athlete who I was taking care of a couple of years ago who tore his ACL sparring, and due to a combination of factors between insurance, work cover, and his just routine at the time, he wasn't able to have the surgery for a few months. Now obviously he felt he was losing his identity from his sport and just detraining the skill aspect of that sport. But I looked at it as, okay, we have a good solid window here to just hammer your quads, hammer your hamstrings, get your body as strong as possible, so that when he came out of the surgery, he'd hit the ground running and just nail every single milestone in that early rehab. So what happened? In those 3 months, he got probably the strongest he's ever been in terms of his quad and hamstring strength. He got so confident in his knee that by the end of that block, he was basically telling me, oh, I don't feel like I need surgery. Like, I feel like I could run. I feel like I could change direction. I feel like I could spar. And when someone tells me they feel like they don't think they need surgery, that's a really good place for your knee to be in going into surgery. And I'm not going to go into the idea of copers versus non-copers in this video, as that's a completely separate topic. But it's something to think about, especially with the increasing knowledge around non-operative ACL management and ACL's healing. Again, another topic for another time. So back to my athlete. What happened? He went into surgery the strongest he had ever been. His quads were strong, his hamstrings were strong. Came out of surgery and his quad activation was insane from day one. We had been doing all of the rehab stuff before the surgery, so his brain knew, sweet, I've done this before, I know how it feels, I know what to do, and he smashed through his early rehab. And he kind of got that time back at the end because he was able to return to his sparring, albeit at a controlled level, quite early in comparison to maybe someone who had a pretty angry knee post-surgery. And then another reason why I like to get my athletes to take maybe a month to 6 weeks before their surgery is that ACL surgery, it's not just a physical surgery, or a physical injury, it's a very mental injury. And getting over that and getting used to that idea of, I'm going to be out of my sport for 8 to 9, 10 to 12 months here. And that can have a huge effect on certain people's mental health and how they deal with the identity of being a sports star or being part of a team or being an individual athlete and not being able to do that. So this 4 to 6 week block gives these athletes time to come to terms with the injury, the rehab that's ahead of them, and just understand, okay, what's the road look like ahead, and how can they best set themselves up for the post-surgery timeline, I guess. And time again, the ones that I see asking questions in prehab, getting themselves ready and set up for after surgery, and going into that surgery ready, knowing what's coming on the other side, they tend to do better than those who rush into the surgery without wondering and knowing what's coming after. So don't think of taking that time and understanding your injury as delaying the surgery. Again, it's a part of the rehab and you need to know what to expect. And as I mentioned earlier, there are certain times when getting the surgery as quick as possible is warranted. Bucket handle meniscus tear, if your knee is locking, if you've had a pretty gnarly like multi-ligament injury, you probably want the surgery quicker. If you're a professional athlete and you have strict timelines of you need to get back as quick as possible, or potentially have a life event in 6 months and you want to be on your feet and moving and back being mobile, then yeah, these things all need to be taken into consideration. In these cases, the decision making is a bit more complex and there's a few more factors involved. But for the vast majority of you, I think a solid block of 4 to 6 weeks before your surgery to do structured rehab is so important. So if you've just torn your ACL, or you know someone who has, and you're thinking, I need to get surgery as quick as possible to get back as quick as possible, maybe just have a think, take a step back and reevaluate where you are. The goal isn't to get the surgery as quick as possible. The goal is to get the surgery when you're as prepared as possible. And using this time to get there is so important. Use the time you get before the surgery, get strong as hell, know what's to come post-surgery, and you'll fly the early stages. And then you just build on that platform 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the track. And if you do want to look at what your prehab block might look like before your surgery, I'll put a link below, or you can just go to this video here.